Welcome, everyone, to the Service Lounge podcast brought to you by Update Promised. I am your host, Brandon Nixon. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about the customer, reviewing top 10 customer complaint trends for the service departments at dealerships. We're also going to be talking about some current events and giving you guys some good tidbits to take back to your dealership and hopefully make some improvements. So appreciate you guys coming. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. We are coming off of a hectic week, and I would like to welcome my co-host today, Christian Eagon. Christian, thank you for jumping on with us today. Christian, for those of you who do not know who Christian is, comes with a wealth of knowledge in the fixed ops side, has for several years been working directly out in the field with dealerships day in and day out, not only teaching automotive software, but also teaching a lot of fixed operations process. So Christian, again, thank you for jumping on and looking forward to jumping in and talking today.
Thanks for having me on the first episode of the Service Lounge, Brandon, and I'm ready to talk about our 10 topics that we'll be going over today.
Yeah, no. So before we jump into those topics, the first thing we're going to start off with is we have to talk about probably one of the most hectic weeks in automotive that we've seen in the last, I'd say, decade, to be honest. Probably the last big event that we ran into with automotive was COVID, when everybody was in chaos and didn't know what to do.
Yep.
This week feels eerily kind of like that with the CDK outage that's going on. So it's been crazy, but how are your dealers that you've been working with? How are they dealing with all of this?
Yeah, it's definitely been up and down for them, right? Trying to navigate what their employees are doing, how they're getting their work done still, a lot of pen and paper, how to handle their customers, how to just sell a car. So, we've been talking to dealers, working with dealers on how can we help them make sure that they're taking care of their customers, things are being documented, they're able to stay open and get their work done as best as possible while they navigate, the uncertainty of just what's happening.
Well, and for those of you who are listening in and don't know exactly what's going on, I'll just give a brief high level, but CDK Global has a nationwide DMS that operates in more than 50% of the dealerships around the nation. And they experienced a cyber attack last Wednesday. And that's still going on today. They are still down. Dealers are not able to access the DMS. They can't access their F&I products. They can't access their service products, right?
Yep.
So it's not only hindering just the dealerships that are on CDK, but it's hindering the nation as a whole. A lot of people don't realize, but automotive makes up more than 3% of the U.S.'s GDP. So when around 60% of those dealers are down, we're going to see an economic hit on this. There's no doubt that there's going to be things that are going to follow. I'm surprised we haven't heard that the government's gotten involved yet. I'm sure they may be in the background, but I'm surprised we haven't heard that yet. But what's blowing my mind is the scale of it all. It seems pretty huge. And I even sat down with dealers that weren't on CDK that are being affected by it. So it's been insane. Like you said, Christian, I'm glad that we've been able to at least help dealers in some way where their service departments are not down. They're operating and moving through that process. So it's definitely a cool item that we've been able to help with along the way.
Yeah, we've been getting some good feedback from some dealers, right? Of their customers are understanding, but they're still getting a good level of execution, right? They're still receiving MPIs. They're getting checked in. A lot of the normal processes are being followed. Just doesn't have that DMS connection like they're used to.
Well, I think it goes to as well. I just had a conversation with a friend recently that, if you speak to any other financial advisor out there, they're going to tell you need to diversify your investments. And this is a perfect opportunity and to point that out when it comes to automotive, that a lot of these individuals who are just stuck into one area, when something like this happens, you're kind of dead in the water. But the ones who have diversified in certain departments, they're still operating business and at a good level. So we've been doing what we can to help out, but of course it's been chaos, and we're hoping everything gets up. I honestly empathize with CDK because I couldn't imagine. All I kept thinking this week is, what if that was us? What if that was us right now, right? And just knowing what I would be going through, what you would be going through, what our dealers would be going through, it's an absolute nightmare. So, my best thoughts are with all the dealerships and also with all of the CDK team who are getting this resolved, and hopefully it gets resolved as quickly as possible. And we see a minimal economic effect. That's my hope day in and day out.
Yeah.
So. Well, let's talk about, Christian, let's talk about the state of the industry. Besides this event going on, we know this event's going to take a big hit on the industry and make an effect for sure. Let's talk about where we're at when it comes to the service department. So one of the statistics I wanted to bring up first was when it comes to vehicles coming into the service department, a study actually just got put out in May that the average vehicle on the road is at 12.6 years now. And there's a lot of factors behind that, right? But for it to reach that high, I wouldn't have even thought it was that high. Obviously newer vehicles, they last a lot longer, but a big factor in this is new vehicles. You can't afford new vehicles, right? Interest rates are super high. So I know that you've even gone through the process of looking at new vehicles recently, and interest rates are high. I've done the same thing. Yeah. So, we're seeing more people come into the service department, which is a good thing. And they're fixing their vehicles because they're older. But it's definitely an interesting spot with the service side, considering that new car sales are down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And, you talk about just the average age of a vehicle. That means most trucks coming into dealerships are around 2011, right? Yeah. 2011, 2012. And on average, probably at least, most vehicles when we look are coming in with 60, 70,000 miles, depending on the year. So there's plenty of room for fixed ops and the service department to generate, those recommendations, get customers taken care of, and make sure they come back to the dealership when they need more service and they're not deflecting to, a different place or a Jiffy Lube.
Yep. Well, I know every turn that you have, there's either a dealership or there's a small independent shop that can handle oil changes. And those independent shops are winning in a lot of areas because they're going in quick, and it's going to tie to exactly what we're talking about today, right? But before I jump into that, I want to bring up, I did some studies around, and I didn't even realize that they put this out, but the Consumer Federation of America each year puts out a report where they review the top 10 industry complaints from consumers. And there's, agencies around the nation that they're tracking, like Better Business Bureau, as well as they're tracking a lot of statistics regarding like legal cases and things like that. And the most surprising thing that came out of this report, it just dropped last month on May 20th, was that for the 8th year in a row, auto-related issues are the top consumer complaint. And that's above a lot of industries that I would have never thought, right?
Yeah.
And, you and I have talked about this. Our whole career is in automotive. And for 8 years in a row, we're still in this spot. We're still in this position where it's nothing but customer complaints. And it's not just service, right? We know service is a big issue, but it's sales as well. So what are your thoughts? Why are we stuck in this rut where we can't get out of it?
I think there's a couple things that contribute to it. And I look back in just some personal experiences when I first bought my first new vehicle and some other things. And when you show up to the dealership for the first time, or, you hear of a family membership going to a dealership, there's a stigma that, there's not a good experience that's going to happen, or, a family member got, screwed over at a dealership or whatever it is. So there's that going. So when people walk into the dealer, they already have this image, or they think something's going to happen, and they're not giving the dealer a fair shot to earn their business maybe, or show them, hey, look at how good our customer service is. Look how good we'll take care of you. So I think a lot of that is just kind of what's been surrounding dealerships as a whole. But you do see dealers working really hard trying to improve that, taking big steps to get their customer service where it needs to be, so customers have nothing but good things to say about what's going on with the dealers they're going to.
Well, and that's a huge part of what we're going to be talking on this podcast, not just this episode, but moving forward, is it's all going to be about the customer experience and what the customers are going through, right? Oftentimes as a dealership, we are instantly thinking about how can we make our processes internally great, which is a perfect opportunity for you to do. But at the same time, you can't forget about what the customer is experiencing, right? They're the ones who are paying that bill. They're the ones who are financing this department, getting to where it's at. So if you aren't customer experience first, I think that's a first mindset that you need to change. But I'm going to put up this list on the board, and this isn't the list that we want to review, but this is the top 10 categories, like industries that have complaints, or that are the highest complaints. So I already said automotive's at the top. Home improvement and repairs are number 2. Number 3 is retail purchase issues. So just going and buying something at a retail purchase store and having an issue there. Number 4 is consumer debt and credit. 5 is fraud and scams. 6 is landlord tenant. 7, professional services. 8 is healthcare and wellness. 9 is utilities. And 10 is towing. What got me the most was consumer debt and credit.
Yeah.
Like automotive is 3 above that, right? We're number 1 and that's at number 4.
And that's everyone's worst nightmare if you have something going on in that realm.
So if that doesn't tell you that you need to, as a dealership, focus on customer first, I don't know what else can. Even like the 5th one down is fraud and scams. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure for myself, I get probably 10 to 15 robocalls a day, right? With fraud and scam and this or that, right? So that's like very prevalent in my life. We're still number 1 above that. So it's an interesting spot for us to be in. All right. So let's hop in. Let's talk about what we did as a study to generate our main topic of this call is the top 10 consumer complaints within the service department. We already know, like I said, the Consumer Federation of America came out with this report that we're at the top, but what are those customers actually saying in the service department? So part of what we did as a study over the first of the year, so from January 1 to the end of May, I pulled 10,000 customer complaints. So out of real customers within the service department, only if they got their vehicle serviced, what are they saying and what are they complaining about in the service department? So I'm going to list out those 10. You guys are going to see them on the screen, but the number 1 is long wait times. Number 2 is appointment issues. Number 3 is being overcharged. Number 4 is rude staff. Number 5 is incomplete service. Number 6 is poor communication. Number 7 is poor service quality. Number 8 is dirty vehicles coming back to them. Number 9 is misdiagnosis. And number 10 is no shuttle service or lack of transportation options. So listening to that list, before I get some of your feedback, Christian, I just want to mention the top 2, long wait times and appointment issues, which I know they go hand in hand, makes up for more than 50% of those comments. So it's a huge percentage at the top, and then the rest is still significant percentage, but way less, right? The 80% of the rest are all filled by only like 50, close to 40% of the comments, right? So what are your thoughts? Long wait times. What do you have to say about that?
Like I said earlier, right? The dealerships are notorious for customers saying, "Hey, I made an appointment. I showed up at my time, maybe 5 minutes early. They said my promised date and time was going to be, in an hour or 2. And then I didn't get out of the dealership till 4 hours later." That's the constant thing from customers at a lot of dealers. And it comes to the appointments and how they're scheduling, which we'll get into. And then communication, I think you said was 6th on the list, but all these relate to communicating with your customer and setting the correct expectation.
Yeah, I was surprised that we have communication lower down on that list. And let me just look so I make sure. Yep, we're at 6 on the list for communication. Yeah. But it doesn't surprise me, right? Because a big aspect of our tool is improving communication. So for that to be lower on the list, I think is great. Yeah. But to hear wait times, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah. So I'm going to read a couple comments from customers, and these are real customer comments. It took 3 hours for an oil change. My appointment was at 9 and I didn't leave with my truck until 12:30, ... Horrible. That customer's probably not coming back, right? Yeah. 2.5 hours for a simple oil change when you have a 7:30 a.m. appointment. It's ridiculous. I have a 1:45 appointment. Didn't get out until 3:20. I believe it took too many walk-ins before me, right? Those are just 3 examples, but I really think those sum up exactly what we're seeing. And it ties to the number 2 of appointment issues, right? Yeah. You have to make sure that you're managing your workload of when people are coming in, what services you're booking to make sure you don't result in those 2 to 3 hour oil changes when they can go to Jiffy Lube right down the street and get done in 30 minutes or less, right? Yeah.
And, we talk to the dealers about the capacities and, spread your appointments out throughout the day. We always want to, dealers put all their appointments in the first couple hours of the day or tend to, and they're not really giving customers much options after 12 or 1, right? Yeah. But we've seen the dealers that are opening up their capacities later in the day. People are taking those spots up and people are fine with coming in later on, but a lot of times they're just not given the option.
Yeah, no, I like that. Like I always tell stores, especially like your oil change op codes, jump in no matter what scheduler you're using, whether it's us or using any of the other providers that are out there. Take your oil change, your basic oil change op code, which is what 80+% of customers are going to select, and lower that capacity in the morning and fill that op code more up in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so that the customers see those are more available time slots that people they're working with, they're used to working with, are going to be in the afternoon there. But I think oftentimes we have to realize that that customer is taking time out of their day. They're taking time off of work, right? Or they drop their kid off at school and they got to get done before they pick up their kid from school. So this long wait time, and also to what you put in with communication, as long as we're keeping customers informed about what's going on, I think
Yep.
complaints like this won't come through, right? Because if it ends in a better, happier experience, then they're not going to go out and complain that, hey, it took too long. They understand the dealerships are busy, but
Yeah.
if you keep them informed, they're not complaining as often.
Yep.
So, so let's talk about number two, which is appointment issues. And it's really related to two main items through our trend analysis that we found, which was time, right? I booked an appointment and I was here for 3 hours. So I think it directly relates to that first issue. But also regarding recalls, there's an overwhelming amount of complaints that I booked my appointment for a recall to come get it done. And then you guys inspected my vehicle. I spent an hour and a half there. And then you told me, hey, you got to come back because we don't have the part for the recall.
Yeah.
How do dealers avoid that? What's their way of getting around that?
There's a couple of different ways, right? And I mean, the obvious one is, and what we work with dealers on is making sure that someone is checking those appointments with recalls and confirming the part availability. And if a part's not available or they have too many for a day, reaching out to that customer, letting them know, hey, can we get you scheduled for a different date and time? But if there's not a notification, an alert, or an email coming in right when those appointments are being booked and someone's not reaching out, then it's going to lead to possible issues exactly like what you're talking about.
Well, and we work with many OEMs around the nation. And what's been surprising to me is that more OEMs haven't addressed this, but we only have 2 OEMs that currently work with us that have direct APIs that'll track the recall part availability and auto ship that part to you. And
Yep.
then what we do is we affect the available time to the customer. It's a really cool tool. But still, to think that only 2 OEMs have that capability through API to work with the distribution centers, identify when it's going to get there, provide that back to us as a provider so that the customer's only scheduling when they come in. That's an amazing process. We've seen that that's helped out a lot. But to only have a couple OEMs have the capability of doing that also hinders what the dealers, can address. But to your point,
Yeah.
there's plenty of ways that dealers can address that and get that done. They just need to put the process in place, right? The alerts in place. I love the fact if I book an appointment with an alert, let's pop up an alert the whole entire parts department so that the parts department can jump in and say, that customer's booked for Thursday next week. No way we're going to have the part for that recall. You know what parts are needed for that recall. You can look that up, get it ordered, reschedule. Overall, that customer is going to be happier so that they don't have to take 2 days off of work, right? I took 1 day and you told me come back in a week. That's instantly going to lead to a negative comment.
And if whether it was someone's fault or not, right? But if that customer shows up, spends the time there, like you're saying, and then doesn't get it done, and they have to, I got to come back next week now, that could lead to them possibly looking up another dealership, going somewhere else, So you're leaving the door open where they could not come back to your dealership just because of this one situation or just frustrate them that much.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to mention here, and you mentioned it briefly earlier, is tracking your walk-ins versus appointments. Very easily, you can do an analysis over the next couple months to see what percentage of your customers are walk-ins versus appointments and reduce your schedule to accommodate for that, right?
Yeah.
You know that there's going to be 20% of the people who show up are walk-ins compared to the 80% that are appointments. So let me adjust my schedule, track what time of days those walk-ins are coming in so that you can adjust your schedule. There's plenty of different aspects within the programs that you're using today that will allow you to make sure you're evenly, working that out and getting that handled along the way as well. So let's talk about that third comment, which is overcharged, which this one I'm not surprised with, right? So before I ask for your feedback on this, I'm going to give you some statistics here. So KBB just put out a report in April that the average spend now on getting your vehicle repaired is $548.32. And
that's crazy.
Average of getting repaired is $548, meaning there's a ton more above that and there's some that are less, right? When we think about lower mileage vehicles come in where it's just an easy oil change for $100 or whatever it might be, and it's still averaging out at $548.32. That's a huge number. Second statistic I'm going to put out there for you is Bankrate just put out a report. Actually, they updated it this month. Only 44% of adults in the US can afford an emergency expense of $1,000 or more. And I would consider, if I bring my car in for service just to get an oil change and you recommend me over $1,000, that's an emergency expense, right?
Yep.
So you're talking about almost half of the individuals can't afford it. So with it being 548, half can't afford high dollar amount repairs. No wonder number 3 is overcharged.
Yeah. And, you talked about it earlier with the average age of a vehicle on a road is getting older and older, higher and higher. So that average dollar is going to just keep getting higher and growing, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not giving your customers different options or methods to pay, right? And we work with different vendors on that. But if you're not providing that customer service, then that could push some customers away as well if they don't have flexible options to pay for services that they need to get done.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good point, right? Financing, there's plenty of financing options out there. There's so many great programs like Sunbid or Dignify that have put in processes where you can get financing as a service customer very easily. But I'll give you an example here. And the one comment I want to highlight here, which I love, $140 to reprogram a key. What a waste of money. So if I'm a dealership, I'm going, yeah, but you're taking my time, right? Yeah. So, and time is the most expensive thing for a dealer, right? But are items like that, I'm sure that customer's not coming back. They just said, what a waste of money, right? They're not going back to that dealership to go get anything serviced. Is that $140 worth you losing a customer for a lifetime, right? For smaller items like that, is it worth it for you to know, I know my labor's high, but I'm just going to do that for, let's say, $50 or $60 or whatever it might be. Is that worth it to keep that customer? And arguably, I'd say, yeah, it totally is. So maybe looking at those low, you can charge out 0.2 hours or whatever it might be, but maybe for these items, I'm going to family, price it out and make it a little bit easier for my customers to come in.
Yeah, and making sure, we know a lot of dealers that are staying competitive with pricing, just making comparisons, but you bring up a good point of just looking every once in a while and make sure that, hey, am I charging what I should be for this? Am I too low, too high? Yeah. What are the surrounding dealers charging? And making sure you're staying aligned with that, so you don't run into certain scenarios where someone just goes on your website or calls in and they're instantly turned away because you're twice as much for a service than the next dealer is down the street.
So that ties into the next 2 comments, which are rude staff and incomplete service. And like you said, if you're tracking your pricing, right, or you're providing that transparency out to the customer, then I don't think those next 2 comments are going to follow, right? Also, we've got opportunities with videos and photos.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone to different dealerships, and no matter if I just got my cabin air filter replaced, a month ago, they still recommend me replace my cabin air filter, right? Which it very well could be, right? Because I drive my car a lot. But if I'm provided as a customer a video or a photo of a new one and my old one in there, I'm going to build more trust. They're going to like that customer experience. They're not going to feel like they're being overcharged because you're being transparent and truthful with that. So I think, tying in videos and photos is a key factor into this as well.
Yeah. And it's huge. What you get from the customer's perspective when they actually see that technician with a video walk around going over the details, right? And then they see the supplemental photo with what the issue is. They can look at it, zoom in on it. They have the price. It's all there and transparent, and it just helps the whole experience, and it helps sell the job, right? If they actually need it to get done, right? The customer is going to see and be like, oh man, yeah, I need to get this done. Not just leaving it up to them to decipher a phone call with an advisor if I actually need to get this taken care of or not.
Yeah. Well, and I've always said too, like the main complaint is wait time, right? But a customer will give you more time if you give them the proper reasons and the descriptions of what's needed, right?
Yeah.
A video is worth 1,000 words. 100%, believe in that. And being able to take that information and possibly provide that to my spouse and say, look, I'm already here. I don't want to take another day off of work. They're telling me it's this. I've looked it up. I could probably do it a little bit cheaper at home. But again, I'm already here. They're going to do it right. They can get it done. My car's going to be done in a certain amount of time. A dealership that allows a customer to have that conversation is executing better communication, right? They're providing that transparency with the photos and videos. So actually, I'm going to throw out a couple statistics on videos and photos. And I know I've talked about this a little bit before, and I won't go in too much detail, but we've argued that you have to be pretty specific on how you're presenting those videos and photos. So let me give you some weird statistics here. No media, all repair orders. We did a statistic. This is again over 1,000 dealers from the start or the first quarter of this year. Okay. So 1,000 dealers, we pulled their dollars per repair order. So how many of them had no media, had video only, and how many had videos and photos? No media is closing at $288.94. Okay. Video only is closing at $232.70. That is 19% lower than not taking media at all. Now, before we talk about that, let's jump to the next statistics. Videos and photos are closing at $361.42, and that's 25% higher on the dollars per repair order for no media compared to it's even higher. It's 36% higher than the video only. So let me ask you, why do you think video onlys are lower while video and photos are higher?
You get two different, on the customer side, you're getting two different perspectives, right? So on the one, and we talk about this, is are the techs just recording the video just to record the video so they don't have their manager yelling at them when they pull a report at the end of the day or at the end of the week? Or is it actually a solid video that it's explaining to the customer about their vehicle and what was really good, selling the green, and what was really bad, right? And I think that's where some of that issue could be, is it's just a check box. Hey, I did my video. Okay, I can move on. Whereas if you have the video, a solid video, and then you have the photos, like we said earlier, to go with it, you're selling the whole thing, the complete story, and you're just giving more information to your customer.
Now, the devil's advocate side of that as well is, those video onlys could be low mileage vehicles where everything's good, right? 5K, 10K service. They come in, they do a quick video only. It doesn't require extra photos. When it requires extra photos, that's when there's actual recommendations. We're closing at higher dollar amounts, right? So I totally understand that side of it. But we've also seen, doing our studies, technicians, like you said, pencil whipping a video is virtually what they're doing, right? And it's all because a manager is just holding them accountable to, did you take a video or not? They're not going through and viewing those videos, maybe putting together some competitions to see who's got the best video, this week or this month for a $50 or $100 gift card. Little activities like that can get your team to realize that you're actually looking and watching those videos, so that they start to be more particular in how they're making them and getting, better content out to that customer and building more trust with them. Right.
Yeah. And some techs, right off the bat, they're going to be great with videos. They don't mind it. They like it. They see the value and the benefit it brings to them and the customer. You're going to get solid videos. Other technicians might take a little bit of time to get the videos where, we would want them to be, or where they're comfortable with it. So everyone, is going to move at a little different speed. But if you're offering the coaching and feedback, making sure the advisors are looking at them and providing feedback, it's going to help everyone involved. And to touch on something else you brought up, the techs should be doing a video, whether it's a 100,000-mile vehicle or a 5,000-mile vehicle, right? Because then the customer's getting the same experience every time they come in, and not getting it different depending on which technician or what state my vehicle's in or how old my vehicle is.
So one thing I think that people can learn from this too, we have some stores that have made videos for their customers when they book an appointment. And I think this is an interesting concept that we didn't come up with. Dealers just started doing it on their own, that they, customer books an appointment, they get an appointment confirmation, text or email, and there's a link to a video in there. And they'll make videos saying, hey, when you arrive at the dealership, here's what to expect, right? When you pull up, your advisor's going to meet you with an iPad. They're going to check you in on that iPad. We're going to have you wait in the waiting room, or we have shuttle service. Our technicians are going to take a video of your vehicle and send it to you. And by prepping the customer ahead of time, it results in them, number one, wanting to come to that dealership because, oh, that's really cool. Last time I got my vehicle serviced, I didn't have that. And number two, you get, your customer's holding you accountable. I can't tell you how many times we've had those dealers come back and go, yeah, you wouldn't believe that when they don't get that video because we told them that we would give it to them, they complain about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great, technique for a manager, not only to use them holding the dealership or their technicians accountable, but the customers holding the technicians accountable as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the last couple items on this list when it comes to complaints here. Number 6, like we talked about, poor communication. We skipped over one. Number 5 was incomplete service. Number 6, poor communication. Number 7, poor service quality. And I think all of those go hand in hand. We've talked about communication, poor service quality, things like that. But I'm going to read a couple comments here. So incomplete service, had to come back for the same issue multiple times. Clearly, like what we've said, making sure you're paying attention. Poor communication, no call back. Advisor seemed overwhelmed, which I think ties to the rude staff comment that we had earlier, right? When advisors are getting overwhelmed because you haven't set up your capacities right, you're going to result in the comments like this. And then poor service quality, I think part of that is tying into incomplete service, because if they come home and what they originally came in for isn't fixed, I'd be upset because now I got to come back and it totally disrupts my schedule, right?
Yeah. And, those are all, there's some things you're not going to be able to control all the time, right? But the communication, we've been talking about it, but the communicating to the customer and keeping them updated and informed can alleviate some of the frustration. They might not be completely happy, like you said earlier, but they might not be so frustrated where they're going to go leave a bad review, go tell their friend about it, or go online, or just not come back to your dealership. If we can have the advisors and everyone at the dealerships communicating effectively and efficiently, it helps the whole situation.
Well, so one tip that I always give dealers too is if you're using a program such as like a texting program or an emailing program, if that customer texts you a question about something and your advisor picks up the phone and calls, you instantly failed, right? Because that customer just told you exactly how they wanted to be communicated with, and you just blatantly ignored it, right? So I always tell stores that right off the bat. Like, the first thing that you can teach your team is communicate with the customer the way they want to be communicated with. They can be in a meeting, they can be on a video like us right now, right? And very easily I can look at a text from my, advisor and respond and get that handled. And when you call them, if they text you a question, it's probably because they're not available and they don't want to take a phone call. So listen to your customers so that you can address their needs, right? All right, so let's talk about the last 3. Last 3 are dirty vehicle, misdiagnosis, and no shuttle service or lack of transportation options. The dirty vehicle blows my mind. But I do have to share, I'm sure there's a lot of people who live in California. When we went through our drought, like we're out of our drought right now because we've had so much rain, but there was so many dealerships that did not do car washes, like because of the drought, because of government regulations, we can't do car washes. So we saw a huge uptick for that a couple of years ago, right? We're not in that same position now, right? And there's a lot of comments in here from luxury dealerships. If I'm a luxury customer and you did not, give me my car back in a better condition than what I gave it to you in, clearly that's leading to one of the top, upset comments from customers.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's not even probably referring to just washing the outside, right? Other times it could be, someone got dirt in their vehicle, didn't put the floor mat down, or had oil on them and got it on the seat.
I'll read the comment right here. Mechanical service or technician left greasy marks on my driver door and inside. Another comment right back to back. Technician left dirty smudges on car seats and armrests, as well as dirty shoe prints on doorsteps. Like you said, it could be as simple as that you have to pay attention. I would always recommend, you got to have a QA department, right? You got to, make sure that you're quality assuring all of it. Is it in a good spot? Where are we at? And is it ready to actually deliver to a customer?
Yeah. You've told me before about that one dealership you went to where the service manager's office or service director's office was right where the cars get pulled up before the customer gets it and they leave.
Yeah. No, that's a good example, right? The taillight situation.
Yeah.
Service manager's office is right where one of our dealerships, right where the customer is going to drive off. And I asked him too, I'm like, why are you over here and not with the rest of the advisors? And he came back, he's like, taillights. The amount of complaints I got when customers went home and their taillight was out, He's like, I told myself I would never have a customer leave this dealership and have a taillight out. So I see every customer's taillights before they leave out. And he goes, and that's just a small bit of what I'm inspecting, but that's the main reason I'm sitting here. I'm like, it's a great point. That's one of the biggest complaints is that you didn't fix what I got, or there's another issue, right? Yeah. So the last comment I want to talk about is that no shuttle service or lack of transportation options, right? Like had no transportation. This is a real comment. Had no transportation to and from work because of inaccurate time estimate. The reason I wanted to highlight that comment is it's less about not having the transportation and it's more about the time, right? Mm-hmm. I can have my wife come pick me up if I know what time she is going to have to bring me back, right? And if you're more accurate on that, or you keep me updated. And that's what's a lot, because the no shuttle service is number 10. So it's a small portion of these comments, like a really small percentage, but majority of them lead right back up to that time element and lack of communication. Right?
Yeah. And, customers are expecting for shorter services, right? They don't mind sitting in the lounge. If the lounge is really busy though, and you have that 8 a.m. rush and there's nowhere to sit, well, now it's not comfortable for them and they're trying to figure out where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to do, right? So they're all starting to tie together with that one. Like you said, the timing, the expectations. Are you scheduling right? That's all leading up to, well, I want to leave the dealership, but I can't because they don't offer maybe Uber, Lyft, or a shuttle service. And like you said, if you're expecting, your wife or whoever to come pick you up and you're now messing their schedule up, if that's not accurate, right? Because now they're going to get pissed too because, you told your wife to come pick you up at this time and you have to tell her, oh, I'm not ready, or that got pushed back an hour or two.
Yep. Yeah. It's going beyond what you're just experiencing at the dealership. Again, going back to our main point of this whole entire podcast is the customer experience. Let's not just think about what internally we can address. Let's make sure that we're stepping back and listening to what the customers are actually experiencing. So I'm excited we did this study. And for those of you who joined today, we're going to be sharing out a lot of these items as resources for you guys to refer back to, possibly utilize for your dealership. And Christian, I just want to give you a huge shout out. Thanks for joining on. You brought a lot of great information. And for those of you who are here listening, we want to hear from you. We were going to be putting out podcasts more frequently with real topics, talk about some industry trends based off what's going on right now. This whole CDK outage, it was a huge topic in a very hectic week. So I give the best to all the dealers who are going through that. But we want to hear about more, like what things do you want to hear now? What do you want to hear later? If there's anybody or guest speakers that you think we should have on here, we've already got a lot of good guest speakers lined up. So if you haven't already, I would love to ask you guys to please subscribe to our LinkedIn page, our social media sites, and we have our YouTube channel and all the rest that we'll put up for you guys so that you guys can take a look at it. But Christian, thanks for jumping on here today. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of our podcast. I think we've got some really good quality content and real customer feedback that we can give to dealers. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. I can't wait to see what else, what other topics we cover and what other conversations we get into. And it was great first episode. Yeah, great first overview for our first one. So again, thank you guys for joining the Service Lounge. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day. And we look forward to hearing some feedback from you guys. Have a great day, guys. Thanks, everyone.